First of all, thank you so much for coming here today. It's a real pleasure to see you. Easter holiday are approaching, but yet we made it. I'm Giuliano Castellano. I'm the director of IFO, and I'm very pleased to have today to chair this event, the seminar on financial law and regulation, and in particular to focus on consumer duties and AI. And there is no one better than our guest today to talk about this. So we have here Dr. Samuel Law. He's actually an experienced academic and practitioner. He's an IFO honorary fellow, and he has been working in banking and finance with a focus on the academic side, the practitioner side, and as well as with supervisory experience for over 15 years. He's been authored several monographs, 2 monographs at least. 3 now, sorry, okay. So then,
one third textbook, so
I'll 2 monographs and 1 textbook, a series of articles, and including one upon which this talk is based today. And then, if you agree, then after we might circulate the paper to the attendees today, and so we give the information. So. The topic of today is of extreme relevance, right? So we do have seen implementing a series of rules and regulation to strengthen consumer protection, put consumer protection at the center of banking law and regulation. This is something that changes with establishing international principle, or when we see how it is operationalized, we have to look at specifically in different jurisdictions how that happens. The Financial Conduct Authority adopted a landmark initiative putting consumer at the center in order to facilitate consumer protection and as well a sustainable banking system. The problem, however, is the interaction with technology, yet again, and in particular with artificial intelligence. Now, Samuel has elaborated a very thorough analysis on the interactions between AI and consumer protection, focusing in particular with the UK initiative. He actually identifies a series of regulatory gaps that we are going to hear about, and he proposes a different approach. I'm not saying too much, so to leave the floor to Samuel. I believe this is a very important topic, and behind the specific jurisdiction examined, I think this is can be a very useful experience, a very useful input also for Hong Kong, that is looking at the same issues in different with different possible solutions. So, without further ado, I leave the floor to Samuel. First of all, I ask you to join me to welcome Samuel. And then now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. It's afternoon. I've been spending the Hong Kong U campus. Can you hear me? Or it's okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So since this morning, I met 2 of my professors, and I met one of my doctoral students. And the reason I'm a bit later than I should be is I was meeting with my previous supervisor, Professor Ali here. So I was a graduate here in PhD. I graduated in Hong Kong U Law School in 2022. And Professor Castellano, you probably didn't know, I was your student as well in one of your modules in financial law. So you were different. You didn't look the same at that time. Yes. So I'm so refreshed. And what happened to you? And congratulations for having such a successful institution. And thank you for having me to be here. I live in the UK. I don't live here anymore. Because after graduating from the Hong Kong U, I got so much opportunity because of the good name of Hong Kong U, and then I got an academic position in the UK in University of Reading at the law school, and currently I'm doing some work on bank supervision at a private institution. So I'm very honored to be being back to Hong Kong U again with this affiliation and this title and honor to contribute in this research. Now, what I'm trying to do today is, I think I have about 35 minutes to talk on my own. So please try to stay awake. And if you can't stay awake, just take a nap. It's okay. Just don't snore. And then we will have some. If you have some question or some challenge to what I'm saying, and you may say, Samuel, this is not what I believe. No, this is not what I was told. This is not what I was taught. Please raise it, and then it will be the best way to really challenge each other. Because one of my major objectives is also to learn from you all as well, be it from an academic perspective, from a practical perspective, or from your own experiences as well. So I guess this is really the objective here. So this is my short profile. This is my LinkedIn, if you don't mind. You can add me on LinkedIn as well. So basically, I don't have anything to add after this thorough introduction. The only thing I add was I currently live in the UK, so I was really honored to be here, getting a chance to talk to you all and learn from you all. Now, what I'm trying to really establish here is consumer, customer's view. Is it really important? I mean, let me make an analogy with the situation of a school. So what makes a good teacher? What makes a good teacher? So that's actually my starting point. Can we rely on caveat students' evaluation as a reflection of how good you teach? So every year nowadays, in every single part of education, from kindergarten to university, students' view become very important. You will have a chance to evaluate your teacher. So similarly, banking, how important it is for the client to really to know if the bank is doing a great job. So around 10 years ago, I start to take up the law as my second discipline. My first discipline is in economics. And then at that time, consumer protection is not really a key mandate for most of the financial regulation, because what they are focusing mainly on is the stability and the integrity of the system. And for some reason, customer view or client's view is not really kind of the main needs, if they're not, well, was not really in the mandate anymore. So therefore, at that time, in 2023, this is my thesis when I was when I first started my academic job. I look at how client actually make a complaint. So if there's less complaint from the client, that means this is working. And this case study is mainly on private banking, because private bankers were very wealthy. They have the potential, they have the money, they have the bargaining power to really challenge a bank legally, and to make a case to make them really suffer. So that was my early thought about resolving dispute on through some private dispute resolution, and how do we really resolve clients' unhappy experiences become very important to me. And then I developed some view and some theory. And at that time, AI and digital bank just started. It wasn't really a thing at that time yet, and it wasn't very long time ago, 2023, 2022, or maybe at most 2018 when I start my PhD here. So there, and then when I finished my PhD, Hong Kong had a thing called digital virtual banking. They issued 7 virtual banking license. I'm not going to talk too much about virtual banking, because no longer virtual banking is called digital banking now. That means the customers, or more specifically now consumer, which is the individual or the bank user, they start to deal with the bank through this device, through here. You are not looking at a real person anymore. You're looking at a platform. Now, it creates a lot of a struggle to me, because when you look at a person individually versus when you look at a platform, it's an entirely different things. So for example, if this seminar is also organized hybrid, would you be here in person? Yes, for some of them, obviously. Sorry, I know him, so that's why I say yes. But for some of them, maybe it is no longer an option. But at the same time, maybe my friend in the UK may join, but probably not at this time. If it come at 4 or 5, then maybe they will join online. So you can see both challenges and opportunity when this digital platform become the intermediate and become an even more direct intermediate between services and the person who uses the service. So that was my second major work on how things go. Now, that if you look at the timing, it was 2025, so it was barely a year ago. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. It was a year ago. I was in Hong Kong. I come back to Hong Kong U again with a privilege to talk about this. Now only less than a year ago, I need to talk about this artificial intelligence, because it has really disrupt how consumer, when we first start here, is affecting how the bank is behaving. And therefore, consumer protection seems to have a new dimension. And in the UK, they developed a thing called consumer duty, which I'll go through it a little bit later, to really measure or to really incorporate customer view. Because in my view, I think this is a very useful parameters, but also a very dangerous one if we are trying to rely on that kind of parameters, which is very largely subjective in essence. Now, therefore, when we are trying to incorporate consumer view into banking regulation, the challenges become, how can we measure it? How can we know where the benchmark is? And this is and where the data come from. And this is a very important question, because when we're trying to establish regulation, which are still largely principle-based in essence, the outcome become very volatile, very fragile, because what I say, what I feel, may not be the same as what you feel. And the traditional contractual, tortuous, or even fiduciary relationship between bank and customers become somehow out of control in a way that, because we don't know who that person from the other end is anymore. So you can see that I'm using customer, consumer, and client very interchangeably, but my focus is really on consumer, meaning the end user of the person. So my research is mainly focusing on individual, who is mainly the recipient of whatever contractual relationship or whatever the society protect that consumer, i.e. that they have no bargaining power. Now, therefore, when in the past it comes to, I'm not selling my book, by the way. They are already in the Hong Kong U Library. I think they are. So what I'm trying to establish here is, from in-person relationship, from talking directly to the bank, from a consumer to individual relationship, to something consumer to a device, at that time it's still called virtual banking. Now we call it digital banking. And how do we really rely on the channel itself and try to make the person who used the channel accountable, or at least responsible for whatever things that doesn't work out. And the underlying behind is data. How do we trust the data behind? How do we really regulate the data behind whatever recommendation, whatever advice, or whatever behavior, whatever you receive from this device? And in business, they are going very fast, going very quickly. And then in regulation, it is obviously lagging behind. It's really lagging behind, in a sense that we are all trying to figure out a way to measure and to justify whatever that is happening. And I think the next Nobel Prize winner will be the one who can figure this out. I'm obviously joking, but I actually get a story to tell before I go to this kind of standard definition of this law. Now, I just arrived maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes before 12:30. Did you know why? I was on the 8th floor meeting with my supervisor. I was talking to her, and then, there's 10 minutes. 10 minutes before it starts, so I really should go. So I went to the 8th floor. It's only 1 floor up, and I was waiting for the lift. I pressed the lift. It was no, it's still there. Why? So there was a traffic on the lift, obviously. And then what would be your next reaction? If you are human, you should. Why don't I use the stair? Okay, why did I use the stair but just wait for like 5-6 minutes, and then Flora call me? Are you still here? I'm on the 8th floor, and then Flora may probably think about the same thing. Why are you not using the stair? Did you know why? I was making a reflection. Why did I use the stair? It was because in those stairs, they have a notice that says only for emergency. So I have 10 minutes. It's not emergent. It's not an urgent situation. But yeah, I commit to Flora, say I will arrive 15 minutes before. So it should be urgent. But am I in an urgent situation? But I thought urgent situation means it's a fire. It's a life matter going here. So it's being laid as life matter. Yes, it is. To me, in banking, integrity is very important. Now, and then after I put down the phone with Flora, I decided, okay, maybe I should, maybe I should just use the stairs. So I was actually a bit worried because I worry when I put on the door, they will be beep, 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 because in my building, they did only use it for emergency. And if you really leave the door without an emergency, the alarm will go on. And then someone will come to put down the alarm, and you will really disturb something, and you will really disrupt something. And luckily, there's no alarm going on. My worry was wrong. And as a human being, as a normal person with common sense, you probably will just use the stairs. And even if it beep, you say, yeah, it's a misunderstanding. Now, I find this a very useful analogy because that was what happened in the bank in the past without any digital space. But now with digital space, if the regulation was not right, you will be forbidden to use a stair just for one floor travel. And maybe you will be forced to wait for 10 minutes. So I was, once again, thank you for your call. And now this is emergency. I'm late now. So I want you, I actually got inspired just now. It was a real story. I was saying, am I being too data-driven already? Am I only following the sign without knowing actually why do we have this sign? And am I making a wrong judgment about what emergency actually means? And should I be the person who make the judgment? If I'm not the person who make the judgment, then should the sign be clearer about actually why should there be a sign forbidding people to use the stairs? If this is only one stair, why do you confuse people? But again, one more time, this is the third time I said that. If we are human beings, if we know how to think, if we act, we will use the stairs. But if we are on a digital platform, that kind of flexibility, that kind of judgment that we used to rely on is no longer there because we will set things up. And with AI coming in, that judgment may be left to somebody who doesn't rely on common sense, but rely on data, which you don't know how to define, or we don't know how the bank define. So that is really a very long way for me to talk about, to put on my problem statement here. What can we rely on? How can we really react? How will consumer really react? And can consumer duty, in a sense, through artificial intelligence, be really the channel to put the bank forward? Now, I'm not going to talk about is it beneficial to have a digital channel. There's no debate about it, be it good or not. is happening. This book says, this yellow book said, no, it's not going to work. It's going to break. But I think it will last as long as I live or my children live before the next thing comes in. Okay, so I think this is very important. So I spend a lot of time to talk about this journey. It's about consumer. It's about a very different dynamic of interaction between bank and consumer. And it's about making judgment as well. And how flexible can we now, under the principle-based regulation regime, can we really make this judgment? And can AI do that in this sense? Now, initially, the design of this page it come up bit by bit, but I didn't make it work. So I'm just going to stick with this page because the rest of the page are those fancy things that elaborate my paper. But I want to focus on, I really want our discussion to focus on what I said instead of reading what the PowerPoint is saying. So I'm going to talk about the first one, about consumer duty. Now, consumer duty is about putting back, in the UK, it's about putting back the power balance, imbalance between bank and consumer. So the FCA has actually developed 4 areas here: product and service, consumer understanding, price and value, and consumer support. In essence, the consumer need to know what the bank is doing. They need to trust that the bank is giving them the right advice. And then they need to understand what is being presented to them. And they also need to know who they go to if they need any support. And all this has to be made very transparent. Now, but don't make me wrong when I say the regulation is not consumer, no mandate to protect consumer. These regulations are all here for a long time because part of the stability system is about consumer being happy, right? In 2008, in my own opinion, I think initially it's just a simple breach of contract. But then it quickly become a group of people who get into a contract where they don't know what they're getting, and then I think there's no law, no important regulation or specific regulation to govern that kind of relationship, and then we are still paying for the prices right now, 20 years close coming. Now, so consumer duty is a very very bold move to put consumer first, to really say, I need to ask the consumer, is your bank doing the right thing? Is your bank giving you the right product? Do you understand what the bank is doing? Do you need to still compare 5 to 10 banks before you are comfortable they're not charging you unreasonably? And are they using simple terms that you can understand without losing the essence? Now, these things are all here, but it comes from here to suddenly here. And for those who handle customer directly, which I spent 7 years in private banking as a banker. So we know consumer have all very different preference on how they want to be served. So we are facing a dilemma in a way that the client or the bank, they need to produce something so standard because they can't really tailor-make everything for you. But at the same time, with such a diverse group of people, they need to make sure these people understand as well. Now let's set aside those disability and languages, that kind of adjustment. Everyone have a very different level. And currently, the simplest way to divert these customers is by the asset size, right? But we have this old debate. Is it, are you much better educated just because you're richer? Maybe not. Can you read better just because you have more money? We have this old debate. We can't tell, but this is what they're doing right now. So this consumer duty becomes very, very fundamental in a way that they're trying to put forward an objective way to regulate how banks communicate to their client on well, not just on digital, but not on a face-to-face situation, on email, on letters, on phones, and perhaps more importantly now on digital platform. And when the digital platform is also governed by AI behind the scene. And to me, it leads to a very big problem about who is accountable for the advice given by AI. Can we still do that? Now, so this is consumer duty. Now, but one thing is consumer duty is not a fiduciary duty. It's just a fancy term of better consumer law for the banking. And I personally think I'm writing another article to try to develop it as a fiduciary duty, but it will be long shot. But so this is just, in a sense, it is close to a fiduciary duty because they want to make sure the bank is saying the same thing as the client understand. But are they taking the consequences as the customer will face, like normal fiduciary duty usually do? No, they don't. So it is something very funny in between. So consumer duty become a priority about to protect consumer, but unfortunately, the regulation itself remain very much principle based. Make sure it's good faith, make sure it avoid harm, make sure and it doesn't. And why we are doing this? Because we want to promote competition, we want to support growth. Why would they support growth? Because if your consumer understand you better, they will engage with you. They will give you better. They will build the loyalty. They're unlikely to move. And then with the ecosystem about payment system, about open banking, etc., you will be it is more likely the bank will fixate with you. And the last time I come to Hong Kong, it was last June. Yeah, I was doing a presentation here as well. And I couldn't use my credit card to take an MTR. And now I can. I don't need to use my Octopus card anymore. But funny enough, for some buses, I still need to use my Octopus card. So if we can develop something digitally and then still make the consumer feel protected and things like that, you will be more fixated to a different kind of service. So therefore, the ideology is very nice. And actually, I personally don't find any fault in this. It was very good. But when it comes to AI coming in, it becomes very, very complicated because in just one sentence, I'm not going to elaborate on it. If you want to see my elaboration, please read my paper, which will be published next month, in June, in Journal of Business Law. And then you can also share it with them as well. Just don't put it online, please. So on AI, the problem is, the data the AI relied on is still very high level. It's very principle based. Why? Because this is all we have. When you look at the financial regulation for probably the entire world, they tell you the principle. They tell you what I want to see. They don't tell you what exactly they need to do. Now, so therefore, the database on this regulation present a very, very important a significant gap because the logic behind is not here. It is simply not there. Now, but I may not be fair to say this is not there because in consumer duty paper, that handbook, the FCA present 180 examples of what do I mean by this principle. They did make an attempt. But this example is like, for example, if the bank doesn't have a proper record of their customers for at least 7 years or something because of GDPR, then they're not comply. Then we go to that back to that loop again, right? What is a proper record? And can AI interpret proper record on behalf of us? Or actually, for that matter, can a person interpret that? Now, I used to write, I think 3 years ago, I wrote a compliance handbook for HAMA in Hong Kong, and that was the first training material to teach how compliance manager to do proper compliance. And it turns out to be a very, very difficult exercise because every single bank has their own practices. And when they try to find someone to write, i.e. me, and then when it's subject to peer review, it becomes a battle zone because they are worried that it becomes the standard of how you should do it, not why we are doing it or the outcome we are going to achieve. Should I use an Excel spreadsheet? Should I use paper? And if big banks, should you put it in a system? Should you use Avalok, for example? But if I'm only a small boutique bank, why should I invest in such a system like this? So that kind of debate is still going, and then suddenly we have this AI coming in, who we don't know whether they have the capacity to really do this job for us when the human themselves cannot agree in the first place. So that would be the key gap that we are talking about. So the key gap is there's no standard, there's no computer workable standard to base on, and then the bank is already rushing to apply this AI thing, and then the regulator is catching up, and then et cetera, et cetera. Now, so my paper basically moved forward to propose something, and unsurprisingly, I can't say I have the answers now, but I think I asked a very important question. I hope is that are those users working under the sunshine when they are when they're deploying all this technology into this platform? What do I mean by sunshine? Is that do they think somebody there are watching them? And if nobody is watching them, are they watching themselves? Are they putting forward something they understand? Are they putting necessary control? And can they rectify? Can they really put forward? Can they really fix things when things go wrong? Now, these are the very important questions, I think, that is not being asked substantively yet, at least not on paper. Because imagine one day, if you don't have electricity, what will happen? There will be a chaos for about maybe 10 minutes, and then things will go back to normal. But if the system breaks down, and then we cannot rely on the bank itself to fix it in a short period of time, then there will be a lot of trouble. I don't think there's sufficient stress testing right now to really evaluate what will happen if the server, if the cloud, if Google suddenly shut down for 1 day without notice. Does the regulator know enough to see there's a backup there? Does the backup work, etc., etc.? Now, these are not made transparent to the public, and they have good reason for this because they're too technical. And my counter argument will be, if this is so technical that you can't explain it properly, should we really use it? When we are talking about consumer duty, that way we understand. And then when we're trying to explain something so technical that you can't explain it in maybe 5 minutes using layman terms, using simple language, or using one piece of paper, the consumer duty will never be fulfilled. And in fact, maybe the bank itself can't do it as well. Maybe the regulator themselves, they need to spend years or if not months to understand the logic, and then next year, new technology comes in. So that is an elaboration of how I see the problem here. And in my paper, I use retail banking in the UK as a case in point, and I also use the complaint handling process to identify this gap there. And this gap mainly come from this traditional approach when somebody will call you versus the AI, which try to guess what you're saying, etc. And it becomes quite traumatized. I spent a 2-hour lecture to go through one scenario to talk about this complaint process, which doesn't really work out because and the best way, what would you do when you go to a chatbot? You say, please talk to a human. Please talk to a human, and then I may be able to help you. Can you tell me? No, talk to a human. Talk to a human. Talk to a human. After 5 times, okay, I'll let you talk to a human. So that is obviously not the best way, but if we are putting forward this consumer duty threshold to the UK retail banking industry, for example, then my argument is there's no regulation to really put forward a stable and understandable regime that we used to have. What did we used to have, by the way? We used to be able to talk and ask questions, and then the person will figure things out. And it may not work so well because if you are sales, if you're very sales driven, then you may just say something that make the customer happy, and keeping our finger crossed that it doesn't really burst. Now we don't even have that now. So where should it go? In this case, I asked some questions, but I would really hope to hear your view about this as well, because I'm sure everyone here has a bank account, has a banking app. I have recently completed empirical studies to interview. I conduct 20 focus group to ask about people in the UK to talk about their experience when they interact with the bank, to try to find some basis to can this become a fiduciary duty. So that will be me for now. I develop some principles, and then I talk about consumer duty, what they're trying to achieve, and then I think I ask an important question of, is it even possible in an AI-driven industry? And now, can I pass the floor back to Professor?
I immediately follow up a question, because I would like you to elaborate a bit more on what also you stated. So the first point is that, can you give us some practical example or the scenario that you mentioned of where, for instance, AI is going to undermine, interact, or create issues in the protection of consumer in the context, for instance, of what you have observed. But where is exactly the contentious point, right? In a sense, behind digital banking, behind that. But where is the pain point? And that I will first start with that, and I have some follow up as well, and then we also welcome from the floor. But
it's very interesting to hear pain point from an academic environment, because pain point is somewhere we hear a lot in the street. Now, from my research and from what I hear, I think the first pain point is the chat box that we use from your app. Now, in the past, we used to have a phone number, and the pain point is nobody pick up the phone, right? And then we have email, and then the pain point is the bank send you an email almost immediately and say, I acknowledge it, because it's a regulatory requirement. You have to reply within 7 days. And then within 30 days, miraculously, in 28 or 29 days, they will come back and say, I resolve it, here is your payment, here's your compensation, etc. Now, in chat box, I think it become a real pain point, because they are using AI to guess what the client is saying. And then, but the mechanism behind is actually just a browser. But the client is no longer using their browser to click all these icons. So they are just doing the clicking for you. So the process is even slower than email, and then a phone call or going to the branch. Because if you don't catch the right word, or if you don't use the word that the AI understand, it just loop you everywhere. So this is one. And number two is the access to the real person. That kind of chat box become another channel to put the customer on hold, so that they can't talk to the person. Now you may argue, well, look, this is what we're trying to do, right? Because if you're a bank, can you hire 200 people to answer to phone calls? No, you don't. But if this channel doesn't really do a similar job, not even close, so it really creates a lot of complaint about how this chat box is doing. And from what I understand, the regulation is still focusing on how they how they respond, if they can go to the thing, or if you get locked out, can you go back to where you come from? And when you go back to where you come from, do you need to repeat what you say one more time? So that kind of process is still underdeveloped. So it becomes very painful when technology get involved, when AI doesn't do their job, and there's no solution, but the bank is already pushing forward.
This is actually the tip of the iceberg, and I see your point. I guess we all get frustrated with when technology fails us, and especially, but this is really just the front facing. But when we're talking about AI, banking, and consumer, we're also talking about integrating data, data that, as you mentioned earlier, data that sometimes can be personal data that might be subject to specific regulation. You mentioned the GDPR in Hong Kong. We have the data protection ordinance. There are different things, but there are these that might interact with that, protecting consumer even when they don't see it, and not just in their user experience, right? But when we have these system in place, at least, and I'm taking an agnostic perspective, so I'm not in favor or against them. Just I guess that's your same perspective too. Technology is just happening. We can have actually answers that are less biased, in a sense that we might have analysis of 300 documents. We can all do that with some of the tools that are even free, the so-called RAG, augmented generation, whereby the answer is based, the AI answer is based on specific file. It doesn't hallucinate. It doesn't have, and this is actually bigger than what someone might be trained on because he's able. So then so if we see where the system is going, how we manage a certain industry, how we manage, then the problem is, yes, I see your point on user experience, but then the real problem is whether there are some mistake in this evaluation and where to put the so-called human in the loop, right? In order, because a protocol, a software does not bear legal responsibility, but the developers, in many cases, shouldn't either, but the owner, maybe in this case, the financial institution that deploy this system, for instance, to evaluate the credit score, to decide whether to give a loan or not to give a loan. Early attempts shows biases. New attempt shows actually some progress, less biased, more helpful, but then something wrong can happen. Where do we place the responsibility? Where do we put the human in the loop? We do have in Hong Kong, like in the UK, a sort of risk and responsibility map, right? The management in charge in Hong Kong. We do have the senior senior regime in senior manager regime in the United Kingdom. There are similar things whereby actually we can trace if something goes wrong, who's responsible, not just in name, but for the decision they actually have taken. When we put AI into the equation, then how do we place the responsibility? Do we need to change the framework and consider it AI ready? Are we not ready? Is this legal framework not ready? Is this what you're?
Yeah, I that's maybe where we disagree, but it's okay.
It's a question.
Yeah. First of all, I think user experience is very important in digital space because there's a floodgate problem. And now, unlike in the past, your influence, if you go negatively, can spread in a milliseconds. It just boom, we have million people affected. So that was where I really start. That was where things really get different. In the past, if you get a bank run, the people still need to make an effort to go to the bank. Now we don't. Just one tweet. That's it. So therefore, I think my starting point is really about user experience, which I think which I agree with consumer duty in a sense that that can really kill the deal in a way. But I also take your point about the accountability part, because we can't just keep on reacting to the market, which kind of the way we did in the past 1,000 years, right? When things go wrong, we fix it. When things go wrong, we fix it, and then we stop it. But now, for example, in Hong Kong, currently the cybersecurity measurement, to me, is a very defensive. They use the word forting, right? It's a very defensive mechanism. We observe and we fix, and then we notify others. We never go attack. We never kill those hackers. We just make sure they can't come in. So if you ask me if the framework, can the framework work? I think there's really no choice is to make ourselves defensible in a way that people can't get in. What my worry is, once that thing come in, it's not fixable. It's like whole COVID in a way. We had to spend a year to figure out a vaccine, and then spend a lot of people to get involved so that we can fight this virus in a way that human being can do now. So I think, in my own opinion, a defensive mechanism seems to be the only way, because it's all over the world right now. You can't rely on traditional legal framework because there's a jurisdictional problem, there's cross-country problem. And you mentioned a thing about accountability there. My view was we have to impose a fiduciary responsibility. They really have to do it in a way that if it happens on me. So far, the SMF, these kind of thing, they don't go to that level. And to be fair, the data is far beyond reliable. But to be fair, it's not their fault. Because Microsoft and Google and whatever AI is, they're using different type of format to format their data, and they are using a different definition to define their metadata. And can they talk to each other? No, they can't. So you need a translator to translate different system, which I think that AI may be able to do the job. So that will be a very interesting area to get AI to translate data from different, and even if within the same organization, when you're using different system, they have a different way to record the data. So data is a long shot. So therefore, with all this, I personally believe it is easier to put into the customer front. I still believe if there's no news, that's a good news. Yes, this is very fragile because you never know when will there be news. But can we really solve it from the inside? I think that there is it's a very long shot to really fix the structure behind. We can only stop the harm from coming, but not really. At this point, I can't see that happening under this mindset. Maybe we will develop some new mindset to guide the AI era. So that's how I take it. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
And I ask you to join me to thank Samuel for his contribution.